Hi everyone, how's it going? I am back with our week one training. Hope everyone had a great prep week, but here we go, week one, day one. By way of motivation and kind of inspiration to start before we get into the nuts and bolts of it, just as a reminder, on our call last week, we talked about how important it is to focus on our day-to-day system and the process in which we live our life and make our wellness decisions. And that's what we're doing throughout the Fast Away program. We're not killing ourselves or having a restrictive lifestyle throughout this program only to reach a goal and then revert back to our old ways. Instead, we're focusing on the process, enjoying it, and being consistent so that we can experience that breakthrough moment where that system becomes cemented into our habits. And as a result, we reach our goals. Remember my cleaning room example. We're not putting in all the effort to clean our room, clean our bodies, just to revert back to old ways. I really want what you're learning here to stick and become your new lifestyle. So to touch on how we can make this habit forming process just a little bit easier to help ensure it sticks, well, think about it this way. Every time you make a choice, that action is a vote you're taking for the person you wish to become. So if you want to make those actions stick and become stronger, tell yourself what you're doing when you're doing it. So every time you start a workout, tell yourself that you're a fit person, you're an athlete. Every time you select a healthy food, tell yourself, I am a healthy person who fuels my body right. The power of your inner monologue is so strong to mount up to help form the identity of who you believe you are and who you truly are. And the good news is it doesn't have to be unanimous votes. It's okay if we have, one or two off times here or there. We just have to have the majority. But don't underestimate the power of your inner monologue and the power of your thought. So I want you this week to focus on emphasizing all of those new positive decisions that you're making to hinder all of those former unhealthy habits or the negative identities that you've associated with. So what's the identity that you want? So for me, when I started my wellness journey, sure, my goal was to lose weight, but really I wanted to become a fit, healthy, full of energy, happy with my body person. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't a number on the scale that was going to dictate my happiness. It really was going to be my identity and how I felt. So I would use that to guide my day-to-day choices. When I was stuck and didn't know what to do, I would ask myself, what would a healthy person do? And after proving to myself with small wins over and over again that I could act like a healthy person, eventually I believed it and I became it. I was a healthy person. So then subconsciously, my choices became easier to make as I was living up to that inner monologue. So you want to make these new habits stick? Change that identity of how you think about yourself. You do have the power to change your beliefs. You have a choice in every moment. So come up with the identity you're going for and then reinforce that self, not only with the decisions you make, but what you tell yourself about the decisions you make. Go ahead and pat yourself on the back every time you make a choice aligned with the identity you want. Say it out loud. Go me. This is it. You're driving yourself. You're your own cheerleader. So go for it. Pat yourself on the back. I want you achieving your goals. So I want you supporting yourself along the way. So just remember that. You all are doing great. All right. So how is everyone's prep week? I know it's information overload the first week. So hopefully that was great to have that week to kind of preview the program, learn and understand the food cycles, learn how to log your food, track your macros in MyFitnessPal, just having that week to start to play around with it. And if you still feel like, don't get overwhelmed. That's why we have 6 weeks together now to implement the program. There are some people that probably want to jump in and try it all from the beginning. And there are some people that might want to try one thing at a time. You might want to start with being consistent with your fuel and calorie intake, then focus on your protein, then focus on your fats and carbs. That would be a natural way to kind of ease into the consistency of it. So you take the approach now that you kind of have the background knowledge of the program and figure out what your goal is going to be for week one, what the identity is that you're going for, what you're going to reinforce, what positive reinforcement you're going to tell yourself, and stick with it this week. Okay, now I know there are some questions on logging your food. I promise it does get easier over time. Take the time now to put in your go-to recipes, put in your go-to food. It will pay off down the road. I use so many repetitive meals, and I frequently use the copy from date, the scan function, using a food scale, and it just becomes easier. But just slow it down for a quick second, because I know there are questions. I think there are 3 ways you can think about logging your food. And those 3 ways would be, number 1, just visualize it. There are many tips and tricks out there to kind of understand portions. So you think about it, a deck of cards, that is about 3 ounces of meat. So you can just kind of understand, okay, when I'm having my protein, this is the size, and this is how I'm going to just log it based on eyeballing it. A fist is about a cup. So when you're having that cup of strawberries, you can just kind of visualize it based on that. If that is the approach that's going to work for you, then look up some of the visualization, maybe print out a little sheet about how to visualize tracking your food, and match up how you can use your fingers, palms, fists to visualize the amount you're eating, and then go for the cups and the ounces of meat and log your food that way. Then you could be the person that uses measuring cups and spoons, tablespoons, teaspoons. That's always another good way of measuring your food and logging your food, because you're using that cup measuring and the spoons. You will be doing a lot of dishes measuring, washing those measuring cups and the spoons, and it can be a little bit difficult when you're out to eat and you're like, oh no, I don't have my cup with me. So make sure you're paying attention to what you're doing and learning a little bit of the visualization of what the amount of food looks like, so that when you're on the go or you're out and about, you have a good sense of eyeballing it. You've been looking at that piece of salmon you've been cooking at home, and you know what a 4-ounce piece looks like versus an 8-ounce piece. So don't simply just rely on it. Make sure you're learning from the amounts of food too, and understanding the portions that you're eating, so that when you are in a situation where you don't have your cups available, you're not at a loss. And then the third way to log your food is to use a scale. And that's the way that's what I do, just because I don't have to be pulling out measuring cups and tablespoons, and it takes the thought out of it for me. And so I probably was breezing over that in my video last night, because it's second nature to me now. So when I was making my salad, I put my big bowl on my scale. I hit the reset button, so it zeroed out. I dumped my kale in, just the amount I wanted, and then just looked at how much it was. And so I had let's say I had 60 grams of kale in there, and I went to my serving, and a serving of kale is 100 grams. Well, instead of using that kind of the fraction system of like how many servings of an item I used the decimal system, because I don't want to figure out 70 over 100, that's 0.7. I don't want to figure out what fraction that is when I know the decimal. So that's why I just quickly put in 0.7. I typed it in of the 100 grams. I hit the reset button, and then I dumped in, the pico de gallo, I actually used a 1/4 cup, because I just figured that's the amount I wanted. So I used that, scooped it, and then I went to a 1/4 cup, and I logged a random serving of pico de gallo, because the one I used was store-bought and did not have a scanner function. And then I added the meat. So on the meat, I zeroed it out again. I tabbed down from grams to ounces, and I just scooped my meat in. So what it might have been confusing on the math standpoint, when I jumped over to my calculator, is I scooped in 4 ounces of meat. However, I scanned my Kirkland meat, it's in my recent foods, when it was raw. Raw meat is going to reduce by 25% when it cooks. So I know 4 ounces of cooked meat is not the same thing as my scanned 4 ounces of raw meat. So what I did is I took that 4 ounces and I grossed it back up by the 25%. So I divided by 0.75 to get it up to 5.3. That might seem very complicated to people who might not like math. I just do like math. So just think about it. Just take a 1/4. If you know it's going to reduce by a 1/4 and you had 4 ounces, well, what's a 1/4 of that? A 1/4 of 4 is 1. 4 plus 1 is 5. Just gross it up to 5. You're close enough to the 5.3 I had. Just keep in mind when you're eating, if you are logging raw food, meat, not really vegetables, I'm really just talking meat here. If you're logging raw meat but weighing cooked meat, there's a 25% difference, because of the water that has then since then kind of evaporated and as the meat's cooked down. So if I was going too fast in that math decimal portion of it, that's what I was doing. And again, I don't do that to make it complicated. That's just a fact of raw versus cooked meat. So you can either just take your cooked and divide it by 0.75 to gross it up, or just take your cooked and add a quarter of it to gross it up, whichever way works for you. Or just search MyFitnessPal and search for a cooked option and then log what you measured. That's another way to do it too. And again, I'm only, because my meat was a fatty 85-15, and so it was, 300 plus calories of it, I wanted it to be pretty accurate. If this was, kale, sometimes I start my salad, I don't weigh my kale because I know I'm going to have, a serving-ish of kale or a little bit less, and we're talking like a 10-calorie difference. It's not a big deal. This is not meant to be controlling or restrictive. It's just logging it all in the beginning will help you understand, here are the key big items that I really do need to make sure I'm logging correctly. The fatty oils that add up, make sure your nuts are correct. Those things are material. Some of your vegetables and the lettuce and the greens and my garlic clove, totally not material. So that's why I kind of blew over some of that stuff too. So measuring your food, you'll get there. It's all about wanting it to be in the ballpark and directionally correct, because you're putting in all this work and you don't want to be putting in all this work for it to not be correct. So that's a little bit more of a deeper dive on logging your food. Again, if you have specific questions as you're logging, post them to the group. Like I said, I'll repeat it again. You're putting in so much work, so don't think like this is a silly nitpicky question about logging my food. No, you want it to be right, so ask the nitpicky question about logging your food. And then it has come up with people before in prior rounds. They notice that MyFitnessPal has maybe different results for the same item. So they either input their own food that they verify, or members can add food. If it's a verified MyFitnessPal piece of information, it will have a little green check by it. So those are always good to select. If I'm selecting something off of the list that I'm not sure what it's going to be, I try to make sure I pick one that has other options that are very similar to it, because occasionally there are outliers that are wrong. So you just want to make sure, don't just type it and pick the top one and move on. If it's especially a material item that you're eating for the day and makes up, a good amount of your nutrition, just scan that top list, kind of like when you're searching on Amazon, you always scan that top page to make sure you're buying the best one. Same thing in MyFitnessPal. Scan that top page, make sure you're picking one that looks like it's similar in totals to other ones in there, and that means you should be good to go and you're selecting a good one. All right, so that's my food tracking overview. So now that we talked about last week and on the food cycle overview, we talked about the nutrition pillars of the program, I wanted to now break down macro tracking to you. So we talked about the whole foods, the carb cycling, macro cycling, intermittent fasting. But let's dig a little deeper into macros, because macros is probably new to most of you. Why is it important and why do we do it? Well, historically, the calories in, calories out mentality does not really work, because all calories are not created equal. And that's why diets get such a bad rap. That's why most people, when they go on calorie restricted diets to get that deficit in there to lose weight, they end up moody, tired, hangry. They're all the time, because they're not giving their body what their body needs. So that's why we are having a reasonable calorie deficit to lose weight, but balancing our macros at the same time to avoid feeling moody, tired, and hungry all the time. So if you are getting those symptoms, let me know, and we'll work on your macro balancing to make sure that we're in a good balance and focusing on those whole foods, so that eating in that like normal, reasonable calorie deficit feels good and we can lose weight in a sustainable fashion. Okay. So our calories are comprised of macronutrients, which I'm calling macros for short. And that's your carbs, your protein, and your fat. Those are your three macronutrients. Carbs. Carbs we need for energy. They fuel our body. They also get a bad rap too, because there's the simple carbs out there that break down into glucose quickly. Those are the processed carbs that we are avoiding in this program. Carbs we are eating in this program are our complex carbs. Those are the carbs that are wrapped in fiber. They're more difficult to break down. Those are the carbs we want to be eating that, to give us the energy and fuel our days. Protein. Protein helps you build muscle feel strong, and it helps us make our fitness gains. We want to be having about 0.6 to 1 gram of protein per our kind of ideal body weight. And so that's why most of you, I suggested you have 25% of your daily calories be protein instead of the 20. I really want to make sure when eating in this calorie deficit, you're still getting the protein grams that your body needs. Because where does your body store protein? In your muscle. So if your body needs more, we don't want it breaking down the muscle we're working so hard to build to access the protein. So we want to make sure that we're being pretty consistent in hitting our protein needs. Yes, if you miss it one day, you didn't undo your damage. Your body doesn't instantly start breaking down your muscle. But over time, if you have a trend of missing your protein grams, that's not good. So make sure you're hitting your protein grams on that nutrients tab, which should end up to being about 25% of your mix. And then the third macronutrient is fat. Fat enables our hormone production, our cell development and growth, and it helps us feel full and satisfied. So fat is very important, and we're focusing on those healthy fats too. And fat can also be a second energy source when we teach our body to burn fat for fuel instead of carbs. And that's what we're doing on those Monday, Tuesdays, when we're depleting all of the carbs in our body and really upping the healthy fats we're eating. We're teaching our body to use fat for fuel. And yes, it might feel a little funny in the beginning. You might on Tuesday maybe feel a little bit of detoxy symptoms. Your body will learn to use fat for fuel, though. It will adapt the more you do it. So stick with it. So like I was saying, when you only track calories, you're not getting the benefit of those individual macros, which can give you the energy, regulate hormones, and help your muscles stay strong. So that's why we're tracking macros. Now, each meal or snack does not have to have the perfect mix that you're going for the day, but you want it to be in the ballpark, especially I would say the protein. Because if you have to have, for easy math, 100 grams of protein a day, if you don't have that at your first meal and your snack, I really don't think you're going to be wanting to eat like 25 ounces of mahi-mahi at dinner. That's just not going to happen. So really, since protein is one of the macros that we want to make sure we're hitting most days, if not every day, take your protein grams, divide it up between the number of times you're going to eat a day, and make sure you're hitting it hard with your opening meal, in your snacks, with your dinner, so that you aren't at the end of the day looking at your dinner and going, oh no, I only have protein left. That's not going to be a fun dinner to eat. So it takes time. That's why, again, 1% better every day, progress over perfection. But we want to make sure we're eating kind of in that macro balance so that we feel satisfied. We're turning off that hunger hormone, and we're not going to be a slave to managing our blood sugar peaks and valleys. We really want to just keep it, maintain it, okay? And like I said, we're taking these macros and we're tracking them in 2 different mixes throughout the week. We have the low carb days on Monday, Tuesday, where we're hitting that net 50 grams of carbs. And then we have the regular macro days where we have that mix. I think many of you are set up at the 45 carbs, 30 fat, 25 protein. And so then we have those days there. All right. So I don't want this to all seem complex or daunting. It really is going to be sustainable and realistic once you get the hang of it. But this is where you're learning about your nutrition. You're learning about the food choices you like to make. You're learning about what macros are in the foods that you're choosing to fuel your body with. So don't get frustrated by it. Just stick with it, learn from it each day, and be 1% better the next day. That's why we're staying positive. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about the reasons to track your macros. So tracking macros, why we're doing this, outside of what I just said about kind of feeling good while being in a calorie deficit and kind of helping us feel satisfied and avoid those hangry feelings and moodiness. Other reasons to track macros is pay attention to what you're tracking, because it will help you understand portion control. You can learn, what does a portion of 30 grams of protein that I should be eating at lunch and dinner look like? So it will help you understand portion sizes as you pay attention to what you're logging. Secondly, we're learning about energy balance. Like I said, calories in, calories out. That is how you lose weight. It is how you maintain weight. It's just science. It's a fact of life. There's 3,500 calories in every pound in your body. So in order to lose a pound, the science behind it is that is the deficit that needs to be created to lose it. That's the excess you would need to eat in order to gain it. So it's science, and tracking your macros is just teaching you about that science in the energy balance. Third, it helps you reach your physique goals. This is kind of, a topic for a different day, but there are people who maybe when they're in the muscle building stage are eating even more protein, and they're playing with that mix. It's not something you adjust frequently, but you can adjust it to kind of really reach specific physique goals. Fourth, you can lose the bad versus good mentality. It's true. There's food that is bad for you. It's a fact. And we're all adults here. We know what food is bad for us. We know what food is good for us. But we don't have to put everything in a good versus bad box. We can say, listen, I want to have that piece of cake tonight. I know it's not the best for me, but I can fit it into my macros. That can be part of my carbs for the day. And then I can layer on my healthy, good choices, and I can still feel good about where I ended up for the day, because what I wanted, I was able to fit that occasional indulgence or occasional treat into my overall fuel for the day that I eat consistently to feel good. So it's not like something has to be restricted and off limits. You will just have an educated choice about when you want to include that in your macros for the day or not, going forward in life. That's why we practice that on Saturday with Treat Day. Fifth, learn how to read a nutrition label. Now that you need to know your carbs, your fat, and your protein, when you're at the store, you can quickly flip something around and take a look and be like, is this going to give me what I need from a fat, carbs, or protein? So you'll really get better at nutrition label reading too. And lastly, you can learn what macro ratios work for you. This is the cool thing about this program too. You'll find out, do you, by the last few weeks, feel better on those low carb days? Or do you feel better on high carb days? People have a different tolerance to carbs. So pay attention to your body. If you're being consistent and sticking with this, you're going to learn things about your body and about how you operate best. And then you can implement that into your life going forward. So that's pretty cool too. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I hope everybody has a great week one. Again, think about what your identity is, what your goal is, and then I want you to be your own cheerleader and support yourself with every decision you are making. Because you guys are doing great. You're putting in all this effort. So let's cheer each other along, cheer yourself along. You deserve it. I'm so proud of each one of you. Keep the questions coming on the Facebook page. I love it. And I'll be continuing to post daily there. We are going to be posting that daily pie chart now. So at the end of the day today or tomorrow morning, post your daily pie chart or check in with me. If for some reason you didn't log it, let me know. But just check in every day at the end of the day or early the next morning, and let's see how we're doing. That's how now we'll be a little bit interactive back and forth with checking on that. So I look forward to seeing everybody's pie charts today, seeing on the Facebook page. Again, make sure you're reading the daily posts that I do. That will give you some education as well. Last week had a ton of information and attachments. So if you skipped any of them, prep week was the most informative week. So go back and review them again if you skipped any. So I hope everybody has a great, great, great rest of your day. I'm so excited. Here we go, week one, day one. And I'll see you on the Facebook group. Thanks, everyone.